Joining me now to talk about these nutball DAs and what they're doing to this country is Moses Castillo. He is, of course, the host of the Blue Line podcast and a decorated veteran of the LAPD. Moses, I've seen this across the country, and every cop buddy of mine I know is going nuts in my text messages. They bust their rear ends, find the bad guy, arrest the bad guy, and like 15 minutes later, the guy's right back out on the streets again.
Yes, it's crazy. It's bizarre. I just don't get it. And that video reminds me that, the LA County inmates, the gang members, the criminals are in custody. They have a name for him. They call him Homie Gascon. That says it all. If gang members see you as the homie, we're in trouble, folks. This is why we're urging everybody to recall him, because he deserves to be removed as soon as possible.
Who is this guy? Where did he come from? I mean, honestly, the stories I hear about him and the garbage he's pulled like this are endless. This guy's like he came down from the sky somewhere.
You know what? I actually used to work for him when I was a young police officer, and he was a lieutenant in charge of our investigating backgrounds on police applicants. And even back then, he had this more criminal-minded than anything else. But, he went up the ranks. He became assistant chief here in the Los Angeles Police Department, then left our department, became chief of police in Mesa, Arizona, and then chief of police in San Francisco. That's where he met Newsom, and later on, Newsom said, "Hey, by the way, don't you have a law degree? Didn't you pass the bar?" And pretty much gave him, appointed him DA of San Francisco, and the rest is history. And you know what? He's never seen a courtroom. He's never approached before a judge. He's never filed a case. He's never tried a case. He's never even met a victim before, and now he's the head of the second largest DA's office in the country. It's crazy.
Moses, LAPD guys obviously are, that's not exactly a laid-back cop job, although it's such a big department. I'm sure there's laid-back rules, but that's a job where you're seeing things every day. You need the best cops in places like LA. What's their morale like at this point in time?
Well, right now, the morale is so low because George Gascon has made it a point that he actually has a hard-on for police officers more so than he does the criminals. He's made it a point that he assembled this team to look at officer-involved shootings from the past that resulted in deaths of armed suspects, and so he wants to give that a second look or a third look to see a case that has already been reviewed and determined that everything was in policy or there was no elements of any crime whatsoever. He wants to go back and take a second look to see if he could actually prosecute a police officer. So he's more for prosecuting police officers than he is for criminals. Now, don't get me wrong. If a police officer commits a crime, yes, hold him or her accountable to the fullest extent. Nobody's above the law. George Gascon has already been declared by a judge here in Los Angeles County in the civil court that his directives were unlawful. These 10 special directives, 4 of them which were in this lawsuit, and thank God this judge issued an injunction saying, Gascon, your directives are unlawful, because he was actually asking his prosecutors to dismiss special allegations, special enhancements, for instance, the use of a gun, the use of the enhancements regarding gang enhancements, that was out the window. He was ordering his prosecutors to dismiss those. Unbelievable. And so here we are. But the danger is we can't do anything about the new cases coming in. So if a new case comes in where somebody used the gun and murdered, let's say, a police officer, he's not going to charge him for the murder of a police officer. He will only charge him for murder, and that's it. And it's crazy.
Okay. George, help me understand, or Moses, help me understand something. George Gascon, maybe I look at this guy and what I see is a full-blown cultural Marxist who wants to destroy the city of LA. But maybe I'm just a right-wing nut job. Is there a better explanation? I can't, when I hear things like you just said to me, I don't have a better explanation, Moses, than that guy just wants to wreck the city.
You know, a year ago, there's this YouTube video going around where George Gascon was interviewed by a USC professor when he announced that he was running for DA. And during that interview, they called it a conversation with George Gascon. And during that interview, he told this professor in front of a large audience that he says, I believe that the government should not be punishing people. And that's somebody that was running for DA. Now he is the DA. He actually believes that there should be no punishment. In other words, what does he want? Lawlessness? And it's crazy. And so that is the kind of person that we're dealing with. He has aligned himself with the public defender's office more than he has with the victims. He's abandoned the victims. Another example, from day one, he told his prosecutors that they're not allowed any longer to attend parole hearings where a victim's family has been summoned and say, hey, the person who committed this awful, evil crime, a murder or rape, whatever it may be, against your loved one, is up for parole. And George Gascon has said, no longer are we going to oppose anyone from being released, even if they are assessed as a high risk. And that's crazy. I can't believe it. So I took it upon myself. I actually attended a hearing myself, and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing in front of me. I was actually advocating for this family under Marcy's law, which is the Victims' Bill of Rights here in California. And when I was speaking, the commissioners on the board said, Castillo, you need to stop because you're sounding more like a prosecutor and you can't do that. And says they decided to send a prosecutor, so you can't act that one. So it's like, wow, so this family here was asked to fend for themselves, not knowing how to proceed. And it just gives an example. And this parole hearing actually granted this guy granted him parole. And he was convicted of murdering a black teenager. It was part of 10 Latino gang members beating and stopping and kicking, and then eventually shooting him point blank in the face. And this guy was out for parole. Unbelievable.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.